brother and sister and I would go with our aunts and uncles every year to get their Christmas tree. We would wake up really early, I mean really early, the day after Thanksgiving, and climb in the car to drive to the mountains. We would spend a few hours looking around for just the right tree, and when we found it, we would load it in the back of the truck and drive home. When you're driving on curvy mountain roads, you notice that there are a lot of signs. Different things like deer crossing and road ahead, stop, yield, but my personal favorite is the snake crossing sign. Okay, so really this sign means curvy road, but one year as we were driving home, my brother called it a snake crossing sign and it just kind of stuck. No matter where you are going to see signs. If you're on the road, you see signs like the ones I mentioned. If you're in a store or a restaurant, you might see an exit or an entrance sign, or maybe a sign to tell you where the bathroom is. When you're out and about, you see signs that tell you which store is McDonald's and which one is Chick-fil-A. Well, signs are used to give people messages. As we continue today learning about the greatest story of all time, God was preparing to come to earth to stay. But he wanted to give the people a special sign to let them know that something important, actually the most important thing ever, was getting ready to happen. God could have used almost anything, but he wanted to use something unique. God used a star. When Jesus was born, God placed a bright star in the sky. This star was brighter than all of the other stars in the sky. That reminds me, did any of you guys get a chance to check out the planets earlier this week? On Monday night, Jupiter and Saturn were so close in the night sky that they looked like one really bright star, even though it was really two planets. Anyway, God used a bright star in the sky, and a group of wise men who lived far away from Bethlehem saw the star in the sky. When they saw the star, they knew that something had happened. They knew this was a sign from God that God was sending a king, that king was coming to earth to make the wrong things right and the dark things light. This was Emmanuel, God with us. As soon as they saw the star, they packed their bags with some special gifts, but maybe gifts we wouldn't have packed. They had gold, which looked wonderful. They had, frankincense, which smelled wonderful, and myrrh, which tasted wonderful. They packed their camels and they began a journey. And it ended up being a really, really long journey. But the whole time, God was guiding them by the light of the star. They followed the star and their journey continued and continued for days and then weeks and then months. God was with them the entire journey. When the star stopped over the little town of Bethlehem, I think the wise men might have been a little surprised. Bethlehem wasn't a large city and it wasn't a super exciting place, but the wise men knew that this was exactly where they needed to be. The star stopped over a little house on a little street in the little town of Bethlehem. This was definitely not what they had expected. They were going to see a king. But by now, we know that God often doesn't do the things we expect him to do. The wise men looked at each other and maybe looked at their fancy gifts. Their long journey had brought them here, to this house, to meet the king that was sent by God. But when they opened the door and they saw the child, they knew this was the king, the Messiah, the Savior, Emmanuel, God with us. And the wise men began to worship and to sing. God couldn't remain. Sin drove him away. But now he has heard what we hoped and we prayed. God is coming to earth to stay. When the wise men first began their journey, maybe they thought they were traveling to a palace or the home of a mighty warrior. When they began their journey, they didn't know where it would take them, but they knew who it would take them to. They knew that God had sent a king to earth, and they knew that they wanted to worship that king. They knew that journey would take time, but maybe it took longer than they thought it would. It took many months, maybe even years. We don't know exactly how long it took, but we know that those wise men kept following. They knew something special had happened, and they wanted to do their part. They followed the star, and it led them to the house where they worshiped the king.